So now all we need to do is record. There's Mr. Scott Custer.
Hello.
Enjoyed your bass playing on the church service that I saw on Facebook. Was that you playing the bass?
Last weekend, no. The weekend before, yes.
Yes, correct.
And I'll play this coming weekend.
Yes, sir. Enjoyed that. We might ought to have a Mud 46 entertainment item on the agenda and let you just play the song of your choice. That'd be great.
Thought you were gonna say everybody needs to play along.
Well, we can.
I'll do it if y'all do.
Okay.
You're in trouble.
I can grab a tambourine or a cowbell. Hello, Maureen. There you are.
Hello, meeting's recorded.
Meeting's recorded,
Yeah.
4:31. Okay, we have a published agenda and we are being recorded. Mr. Yates, read the disclaimer, please. Or not.
This is Brian. So we are adjourning the MUD 46 Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, April the 21st, 2021. As in prior meetings, I'll briefly go through the remote meeting procedures and then we'll perform a roll call. So to begin with, need to remind everyone the meeting's being recorded as required by the Texas Open Meetings Act. Second, please remember to state your name before you speak, including the making of any motions. When you're not speaking, please be sure to mute your line. Third, we'll continue the practice of having a roll call to vote on each motion. After a motion has been made and seconded, please wait until you hear your name called and then respond with a verbal aye, a nay, or an abstention. Finally, we need to identify each person who's joining the meeting remotely this afternoon so that we can accurately reflect the attendance in the minutes of the meeting. I'll perform a roll call for the board members, followed by staff and consultants. When you hear your name and your company called, please respond by indicating that you're present in the meeting. Likewise, if you need to leave the meeting before it adjourns, please announce that you're doing so before you disconnect. Once I've completed the roll call for directors, staff, and consultants, I'll ask for any members of the public to identify themselves for the record. So starting with our board of directors, Mark Bondero,
Present.
Margie Podjalinski,
Present.
Deidre Eklund,
Here.
George Newman,
Present.
Scott Custer.
Present.
Okay, that completes the roll call for our board of directors. We do have a full quorum present for the meeting today. We'll move on to the staff for Woodlands Water, Jim Stinson,
Present.
Mike Mooney,
Present.
Maureen Bourgeois,
Present.
Jeannie Scott,
Present.
Shelley Lawson Kennedy.
Present.
Anyone else from Woodlands Water in the meeting? Moving on to San Jacinto River Authority staff, Chris Meeks,
Present.
Matt Corley,
Present.
Ed Shackelford.
Present.
Anyone else from the River Authority in the meeting?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to MUD 46 consultants. Do we have any MUD 46 consultants in the meeting today? If not, we'll move on to members of the public. Do we have any members of the public present in the meeting today? We need to identify you for the record as well.
Wilson McCoy, resident.
Welcome, Wilson.
Thank you.
Anyone else, any other members of the public present in the meeting? All right, if not, Maureen, does that cover everyone who you see is logged into the meeting today?
That covers everyone.
All right, that'll complete our roll call. Mark, I'll hand it back over to you to begin the agenda. Thank you.
All right, there being no one else identified, we'll skip comments from the public. Go to number 3 for adjustments. Mike Mooney, is that going to be you or Jeannie or Maureen?
That is
This is
this is Mike, and that is me, but nothing for you all this month.
Okay,
I don't have anything either.
okay, thank y'all. We'll go to number 4. This involves myself and our general manager, Jim. It's about a resident at 154 North Camilla Grove. Her name is Stacy Haynes. And Jim, you want me to keep talking, or do you want to take over, or how would you like to handle this?
I can give a brief summary. This is a resident, number 154 North Camellia Grove Circle. She had extremely high usage for the March 24th bill date, which included the freeze period. The usage for that period was 29,000 gallons. The typical usage during that period is around 5 or 6. Our staff offered an adjustment based on the policy back to the average usage, which the resident appreciated, but then she realized that she was going to have to pay. In adjustments, we still charge the customer the wholesale rate, the San Jacinto River, our wholesale rate for water. So we adjusted from 29,000 back to 6,000 gallons, but that left the resident still owing 23,000 gallons of wholesale rate at $2.26 for about $51.98. And she felt like that she disputed that, did not want to pay that. She didn't use the water and didn't feel like it was appropriate to have to pay that fee. So the option, if they don't like what our offer is to take it to the board.
And this is Mark Vonderoe. That is what she did. Jim contacted me and gave me her contact information.
Well, she asked, she wasn't satisfied with what our billing department told her. She visited with me numerous times, wasn't satisfied with what I was telling her, asked who else she could speak to. And I said, you live in a mud board, you have a president of the mud that would be your next recourse. Well, first of all, I said, you're welcome to take this to the board and appeal it. That's what the customer, the options you have. No, I didn't. She wasn't happy with that. Who can I talk to? So I said, I'll contact your Bud Board president and see if he's available. And then Mark did visit with the resident.
Yes, I did. She said that she did not leave her faucets running during this freeze period. I asked her if she was at home the whole time. She told me she was in and out, and I didn't press her on what that meant. The water went through the meter. That's all I'm saying to my board. I think that the policy offers her a disputed amount. I think that whether she admits to letting her faucets trickle during the freeze or not, that's on her, but the water did go through the meter. So my recommendation.
I had numerous discussions, and after several discussions, she did reveal that that she left it dripping a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, a little bit is not like a lot, so a little bit. So I would say a little bit went through the meter.
It couldn't have been enough. Couldn't have been enough for this. So.
Right.
So anyway, I think that we should offer her what the policy allows Jim's staff to do, and that would be my recommendation. It's not in the form of a motion, but that's the way I feel about it. So,
I second what you say, Mark.
this is how we've always handled it, and
Yep.
the meter didn't read without the water going through it. That's my whole point. So,
Exactly.
And I will say the usage is back down to normal for this month.
that's good.
So we're talking about, she's looking for another $60 rebate.
$51.98 about.
Right.
No,
I don't know if is that in the packet, guys, but here's the.
it's here. We have a
Yeah,
copy.
51.98, yeah.
Yeah, we have a copy of it.
And I spoke with her and, I told her, I said, you're not gonna get a late fee. We're not gonna turn your water off. If you would like for us to defer this to next month so that you can appear before the board. I gave her all those. She said, no, she just wanted it to be handled in a final decision and that way she can pay her bill. So, let's see, when's her bill due? It's due yesterday. So anyway, here we go today. So she does not want to appear next month. She doesn't want it deferred. She wants us to make a decision, and I guess you'll pay her bill whenever. Who would contact her from staff?
I
Pretty much.
probably will, since I had the last discussion with her.
Okay, I don't mind contacting her, but since, okay. All right, board, let's make a motion and get on with our meeting.
Well, Mark, I'll make your motion that we go ahead and just do what Jim said. And just leave it with what the office told her.
Okay. I'll second that motion then. Any discussion? I would like to ask Jim a question. Jim, did we have any other situations like that in our mud district? And I mean, do you know of anybody that didn't want to pay their freeze bill?
Gosh, I'm sure there are, but we've had, our gals have been working overtime to try to deal with the request and the adjustments
Okay,
that are appropriate, that we agreed to do. But
sure,
I think
sure.
I pointed out, freezing broken plumbing pipes is exactly why the adjustment policy was created, or one of the reasons many, many years ago. So yeah,
Exactly.
we've had, I would say, Maureen, literally hundreds of adjustments for this freeze.
But no one wanted to take it up the chain of command in our district.
This is the first resident
one?
that
Okay,
that I've spoken with about it, yes.
okay.
And this is Scott. I think I have a question just to make sure that I understand here. The dispute is around, we've made an adjustment at the water, but the dispute is around, she doesn't want to pay the conversion.
20, yeah, the 23,000 gallons at $51.98.
We waive for all first-time offenders, we waive the surface water conversion fee. That is being waived, you're absorbing that expense.
Okay,
It's the wholesale rate. The San Jacinto River charges all MUDs $2.26 for every 1,000 gallons that we read on the meter. That's their wholesale water rate. And the policy says we can adjust the surface water conversion fee and, we take off the mud portion, but the MUDs, you would have to essentially pay that fee on the behalf of the customer, and that's the number in question. It's the $2.26 SJRA wholesale fee for the 23,000 gallons that we're removing from her bill.
we're removing it from her bill, but
No,
asking her to pay it?
We're adjusting the bill. We're removing we're adjusting the bill by 23,000 gallons
Okay,
back to her normal usage for February.
yeah,
Just the bill was for 29,000 gallons. We're deducting 23,000 gallons from her bill.
okay. What am I missing?
You're missing that the policy says she still has to pay that 23,000 gallon SJRA wholesale rate of $2.26.
So we're not adjusting her bill.
Gosh, the bill was $226.03.
Okay,
What we're saying it owes after the adjustment is what? About
120.08.
105, I think it's 105.
95. It's
Or
on the
90.
page 3 in your packet.
Yeah, it's on page 3.
Look on page 3.
Total refund, 105.95.
Yeah,
So everybody gets this but me, I guess. We still charge her for 23,000 gallons.
that's the
Wholesale.
wholesale.
Yeah, you're just charging the wholesale rate. It's just the cost of the water.
Yeah, I get that, but we charge our customers a retail rate, not a wholesale rate. So we're refunding the retail rate, but
Yeah.
still charging the
We're-
wholesale?
We're forgiving the mud retail rate, yeah.
So we're charging her the difference between the retail and the wholesale?
Well, it's, that, I just say we're forgiving the retail rate, but still applying the wholesale rate.
Why would we do that?
Because if you forgive that, you're essentially letting other customers pay, take up that
Black.
expense. The SJRA does not forgive that. We
Yeah,
still
I know.
have to pay them.
Yeah, I get that, but we're also absorbing what you've forgiven on the retail rate. I'm just asking to understand. I don't get it. I didn't know we charged wholesale rates to our customers.
On refunds.
No, and, yeah, only we don't. On the water bill they get, it's just a rate.
Yeah,
But when we make an adjustment, we don't forgive, if that's the right term, the amount of money that we paid SJRA Woodlands Division, we don't forgive.
okay. Whoop. Somebody left.
Deidre.
Okay, so what you're saying is this action is consistent with the steps that we would take with every other forgiveness that this board doesn't see. The resident would still be forgiven only the delta between the retail and the wholesale rate.
That is
Right.
correct, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
And the surface water conversion fee, that is forgiven, which we do absorb that.
Yeah, we used to not forgive that, or
Yeah, that's the biggest part of the bill.
but
Mhm.
it's such a, we don't forgive it for multiple breaks or multiple problems. It is the first time they request an adjustment.
okay.
We at staff level have the authority per the policy to forgive that fee. But if they come back a week later with another break, we'll say, no, you've already used up that benefit.
Okay, I got it. So it's being consistent with the policy. It's just
Right.
hard, it's hard to explain to a resident why, hey, you had a leak, but we're still gonna charge you our wholesale rate, even though we forgive your retails. It's a different matter. So I would vote in this case, right, we'd have to be consistent with our existing policy with, the
Exactly.
fact that I don't get our policy is something different. So that's okay.
All right, we have a motion by Margie, second by Mark Vonderow. I will call the vote now. Mark Vonderow, aye. Scott Custer,
Aye.
Margie Podjalinsky,
Aye.
Deidre Eklund,
Aye.
and George Newman.
All right.
All right, thank you very much. All right, let's go to the consent agenda, 5 through 11.
Mark, I just have one question. On number 10, where it says the expenses for district underwater trustee business, what
Okay.
meetings is that? Do we have a list of meetings?
Okay, it would be the Woodlands Water Agency trustee. It would be a normal MUD meeting. It would be the One Water Flood Task Force meeting. It would be anything AWBD related.
Okay.
And just off the top of my head, I believe that's about all.
Okay.
We had a special MUD meeting for our, when we have that first part. of
That was in
April,
March.
March.
That one's already been.
Yeah, back to March.
So, special meetings like that, so.
Okay.
Okay.
So to Margie's point, do we have a list or are we? I'm not sure if we vote yes in the consent agenda authorizing 10. Do we need specificity? Kind of feels like it.
Kind of feels like it, I guess. Brian,
Yeah.
what do you say, sir? Specificity?
This is Brian. Yeah, this is on a district by district basis. How much backup boards want for the consent agenda item. Some of them say, look, I don't want to talk about this and deal with it every month, and just say whatever is submitted and that qualifies to staff, whatever submitted to staff and qualifies under the policy, then it's approved as a
Okay.
consent item. But if you want more detail on
No.
like a summary, then that's something that
This is
staff would
Scott.
need to put
This
together
is
for
Scott,
y'all.
Brian. That handles it for me. You're
Yeah, that's
approving
fine.
within existing guidelines. I'm good.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so you're looking for a motion?
I'm looking for a motion for items, I guess, 5 through 11 on the consent agenda, if there are no questions about individual agenda items.
I had a motion, we accept the consent agenda.
Okay, I'll second Mark. This is Margie.
Okay, okay, thank you, Margie. Motion to vote on the consent agenda by George Newman, second by Margie Podjalinski. I'll now call the vote. Mark Vondereau, aye. Scott Custer,
Aye.
Margie Podjalinski,
Aye.
Deidre Eklund,
Aye.
and George Newman.
Aye.
I did not hear your response, George.
All right, yes,
Okay,
let's
okay.
go.
Thank you. All right. Number 12, SJR briefing on effluent used to irrigate the Woodlands golf courses. Hello, Mr. Shackelford, or would that be Chris Meeks?
It's going to be Mr.
Meeks.
Chris Meeks.
Okay, Chris.
As a way of introduction, we had talked at the special meeting about utilizing water impoundments, effluent, something other than potable water for irrigation, and kind of talked about golf course irrigation. And I reported that the San Jacinto River Authority has worked over the years to establish sales of effluent to the golf course. And we asked that they talk about what their past, the present, and the future might hold regarding effluent sales to golf courses and others.
All right, well, this is Chris Meeks. I'm going to give you a high-level overview of what we're currently doing and kind of who we talked to before about the reuse and where we think it may be able to go. So currently, the only contract we have for reuse is to Sequoia, which is, and forgive me, I'm not a golfer, the Oaks and the Panther by Wastewater Plant 1, whichever is the southern course. That's the course that we sell irrigated water or reuse water to. So what we have for that one is actually a permit through our Wastewater Plant 1 to sell up to 600,000 gallons per day to Lake Harrison. So we have a pump at Wastewater Plant 1 and it pumps it over to Lake Harrison, and then the golf course pulls it out of Lake Harrison, irrigates the golf course with it.
And Lake Harrison, excuse me, this is Mark. The Lake Harrison is the at the wharf, if it's still called the wharf.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. All right, go ahead. Thank you, Chris.
Just a little bit of how that works. We do not send water every single day. On the lake, there's a little level indicator. And when that level indicator gets to a certain level, it triggers the pumps to come on, and then we automatically send flow to them. There is a limit switch, so it doesn't go above 600,000 gallons per day. So that contract was signed July of 2009. It's extremely cheap water. It's just verified. It's 30 cents per 1,000 gallons, or a minimum of $2,500 per month. So I can only think of a handful of times since I've been here that we've exceeded the $2,500 per month, with the exception of the drought, of course. In the drought, we did send quite a bit. But average usage, I went back a couple years. In 2020, they called for 26 million gallons. The year before that, 2019, they used 10 million gallons. So as you can imagine, it's, very weather dependent because they're pulling the water from Lake Harrison on a normal basis. And if Lake Harrison drops, we fill it back up with the reuse water. So going back to about, I want to say 2014, 2015, Sequoia, Club Corp, whoever they were at the time, approached us about actually selling water to TPC over there by Slash Pine and off of Grogan's Mill. But when we just started discussing it, we had informed them that the cost of water was going to increase because the value of water is a lot more than what was originally signed in that 2009 contract. The 2009 contract, for informational purposes, that was based off of basically the capital cost for the pumps and then the electrical usage. We can increase that rate, but it's going to be based off of electrical usage. So if we see electrical costs go up and if we need to do some repairs or if there's permits and stuff, we can increase that cost. But for the most part, even if you go 35 cents, you're not going to break that $2,500 a month limit. So Sequoia, Club Corp, they at that time were no longer interested in using reuse. But I want to say it was about 2 to 3 years ago, the township approached us about using water from, or the reuse water to water the Esplanades throughout the woodlands. Instead of the sprinkler systems they have and the water trucks that pull up to a hydrant, get the water and go from there. So what we've done since then is we've applied for what they call a 210 permit, which allows for that to occur.
You said a 210?
Yes, sir, 210. And the reason it's called a 210 permit is if you're going to look it up, 30 TAC 210. That's chapter 30 of the Texas Administrative Code. And then 210 is the reference for there. And those are the regulations that relate to effluent reuse. And as you go through it, there's a lot of technical stuff, type 1, type 2. It just basically tells you what you can use the water for. Ours, type 2 is a lot cheaper. Type 1 is a lot more, it's like you can put it into a lake, people can swim in at contact basically. So high level overview, we're hoping to do more with it. I would tell you there is the caveat that any reuse that the Woodlands Division does use needs to be coordinated with, of course, Ed for one for sure, but also his counterpart on the raw water side of the world, as well as the Highlands Division, because the water that leaves the Woodlands facility is counted in the raw water usage in the portfolio, as we call it, in the Highlands Division. So when the Highlands Division is planning long-term water usage, they do count that 7 to 10 million gallons a day that's coming from the Woodlands as part of their water. Does not mean it's we can't use that water for use around the Woodlands. It just means that we'd have to have some conversations first. And then one little thing as well, when you enter our wastewater plants, as you walk around, you'll see a lot of faucets, hydrants, and stuff like that. 90 to 95% of those all use reuse water. If you're touring the plant and you see on our clarifiers, you see the sprinkler that's on 24 hours a day pretty much, that's using what we call plant process water, reuse water. So for our internal purposes, including our irrigation systems, we've already converted over from using potable water to using the reuse water inside the wastewater plants. High level overview, a lot of information, but if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer what I can.
Have y'all investigated other golf courses and, even to the point of potentially laying a line to get to them?
We looked at that when the township approached us, I want to say it was about 3 years ago. We went and looked throughout the Woodlands, and I'm sure I could still find that map, of all the areas that we thought irrigation could go to, looking at amenity ponds, looking at little disc golf parks and stuff like that we think may be able to use that potable water is currently on. So we grabbed all that data and took a look at it. The hindrance every time we start talking reuse is money, because if I'm going to lay another system throughout the Woodlands, I'm going to have tanks, pumps, purple pipe, it's not going to be a few thousand, not a few 100,000. Depends on where you want to go and how you want to go. It's a lot of time to get there, and it's a lot of money. So,
Well, it
But it is-
surprises me that one golf course would use 600,000 gallons a day potentially.
it's up to 600,000 gallons per day.
Or you're saying really 26 million, 20 something million a year.
Right. Last year in 2020 was 26 million a year. So I do the math, but do that divided by 365, and that's what their average per year was. That's what I reported on the permit.
So
George, there are some golf courses in the Houston area that use between 75 million to 150 million gallons a year to irrigate.
So the other question I had was today, the golf courses are getting their water from the wells, their wells.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. So Sequoia is Club Corp. Don't know what they are now. They're actually a member of the GRP as well. And so they have wells on their property. They do use, of course, but they also use the reuse water from wastewater plant 1. I'm going to talk with my hands here. So what at wastewater plant 1, behind it, there's 2 golf courses. One's the Oaks, one's the Panther. The southern course uses reuse water from wastewater plant 1. The northern course uses reuse in terms from wastewater plant 2. How that works is they pull the water that comes out of Lake Woodlands. They have a pond there, collects it. They irrigate that golf course with that water. But TCEQ said in order to do that, they had to put the water back into Lake Woodlands. So the only way you can put water back into Lake Woodlands is wastewater plant 2. And so what occurs is, and it's very convoluted, but basically Sequoia buys, or let's say, I guess, buys the water from Lake Conroe Division from Lake Woodlands. And then the water is put back in there for Lake Conroe and Sequoia by the Woodlands Division wastewater plant 2.
And how much is that?
I'd have to go double check. I want to say it was something like 1,000 acre feet a year. It was a small number.
Well, really the question I was heading towards is when they pump water from a well, are they paying the conversion fee?
Pumpage fee?
Yeah.
No, Matt.
How do they get around not paying that conversion fee?
So this is Matt Corley. When the GRP was set up and we solicited participants with the contract, more or less, Sequoia was in Sequoia at the time. It's now Club Corp. They basically had their own mini GRP that Chris has kind of described, where they had groundwater wells, but they were shifting some of their demand to wastewater effluent. And so they were able to meet that conversion on their own. Don't know really, other than that they didn't want to go through the steps of creating their own GRP. They participated in our program, and what we got in exchange for them being part of our program was their ICO adjusted TQD, which doesn't even exist anymore. It's basically water credits, if you will. And so they brought to the table these water credits because they were over converting with the effluent. And so at the time, it was a good deal. Now they're part of our program, but do not pay a groundwater pumpage fee.
And really, I'm looking, there's like 6 golf courses, 5, 6 golf courses in the Woodlands, like Carlton Woods, Player, Bend, there's Palmer course.
4 fall into the Club Corp category.
Yeah, there's 4.
Okay, well, okay, fine, 4.
Yes, sir. So like Carlton Woods isn't part of what's considered, I guess, the Club Corp system. And so it's just those Club Corp systems, which there's 4 that are part of the GRP program. I'm not sure how the other courses like Carlton Woods are handling their water demands.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Mr. Newman?
I think so. I'm really kind of probing to see if there's an economic advantage to a golf course like And I'll just pick Carlton Woods because they have all these big giant lakes. And I'm wondering, how do they keep them full? So are they, if they pump water, if they pump groundwater, they're not paying you a conversion fee.
Yeah, I know a lot of the courses that I play at do use groundwater wells to replenish water in their irrigation ponds. And I believe that is a special permit, groundwater permit. It's classified as a different type of permit. The name of it escapes me. It could just be just an irrigation permit, but
Okay, so there's not an easy answer.
I'm sorry, during the creation of the GRP program, if they weren't at 10 million gallons a year or above, they didn't fall into the category of having to participate and pay a pumpage fee. So
yeah, and I know a lot of those golf courses were right on the cusp. There was a lot that were under that 10 million threshold, and so they did not need to create or join a GRP. Some of the golf courses, I know their GRPs were simply conservations that are irrigating 4 days a week. They went to a 2-day-a-week irrigation schedule, and that helped prove up their GRP. And so that's basically what their GRPs consist of, is a conservation program.
Okay. All right.
All right, George, if we need to revisit this some more, just let us know, and we'll be glad to do it. It's very interesting.
Surprisingly
complex. Yeah, not a simple deal. Anything else? Any more questions to the River Authority about the golf course irrigation? Okay. Receiving number 13, receive and act the information regarding the upcoming MCAD Board of Directors election.
We received notice, and I think I announced last month that the election cycle was coming up. It's every 2 years for MCAD. Last election cycle, Peggy Hausman was elected through the township as the MCAD Special Purpose District Representative. Arthur Bredehoff was on the ballot last time, but did not get elected. The township, through the appraised value that they have and the kind of the convoluted way that system is structured, they really control the special purpose district candidate in Montgomery County. So no surprise, they were able to seat Peggy, and Arthur has expressed an interest to run again. So on Monday afternoon, Metro Center Mud agreed to put Arthur's name forward for a candidate. So there will be a special purpose district candidate election. Unless you want to put another name forward for that position, no action is required tonight on this agenda item.
Okay. I think Arthur Bredehoff would be a fine candidate to sit on the appraisal board.
Well, and you may recall, he was actually appointed to fill a vacant seat, unexpired vacant seat, after he lost that election. So he's got some experience working with that board, and it'll be difficult to get elected if the township puts forth a candidate, but we'll see.
Yes, you are absolutely true. Okay, any more comments? Okay, number 14, Brian Yates, attorney's report.
This is Brian. Thank you, Mark. Under the attorney's report, I've been reporting to boards on the status of the current legislative session. We're right in the thick of it right now with the session. We've got about 6 weeks to go. Surprisingly enough, even though the legislative session got functionally started late, with legislators not being in Austin regularly until a month or so into the session because of COVID, and the security issues following the incident at the DC Capitol. We've still got roughly the same number of bills introduced that we see in a typical session. This time we've got a little under 7,000 bills introduced. Generally, there's 7,000 to 7,500 bills introduced. So they were just introduced in a shorter period of time, more compressed time period. Those bills are now working their way through the legislative process, being assigned committees, having committee hearings, moving to the floors for votes, and if they pass out of the chamber, then going over to the opposite chamber, House to Senate, Senate to House. And as we've talked about in previous sessions, the passage rate for bills is around 15% or under. So in a session, you'll see around 1,000 or so bills get passed out of 7,000 or so that are introduced. With this period right now being the primary weeding out period for bills to figure out which ones have got momentum and are going to make their way to being considered, and which ones will languish in committee and never really go anywhere and have the clock run out on them. So we're very active in that process. We have 2 full-time lobbyists in Austin working on bills that we represent clients on, and also assisting AWBD with their legislative process, and have received a few questions from directors that were interested in getting a little bit more into the weeds on some of the bills. And so I've worked with Shelley to have an email sent out to directors that included 2 links to AWBD summaries. One was like more of a memo summary from Augie Campbell with AWBD, and the other was a summarized list of bills that AWBD is tracking for directors who would like some more information on bills that generally impact the MUD community. Also went ahead and provided to Shelley our internal bill tracker that we're looking at for our clients and for the industry in general. That is a much more extensive list. It's closer to 900 bills. The neat thing about that bill tracker is it's in a PDF format, and you can go to the bill. If there's a bill that you're curious about, you can click on the bill number, and it's a hyperlink, and it will take you to the Texas Legislature online. That's a very useful tool. That Legislature Online is a very useful tool because you can see not only the text of the bill, but you can see if there are committee reports. You can see some testimony information. You can see the status of the bill, if it's been assigned to a committee, if it's received a hearing, if it's going to the floor for a vote, if it's on the calendar for a vote, and if it has a companion bill in the opposite or the other chamber of the legislature. So helpful information for directors who are interested. And if there are any particular bills that you have additional questions about after you look at that, if you want to give me or Jim a call, we'd be happy to visit with you about that bill. A couple of bills that came up during the trustee meeting last week related to the River Authority. There have been 3 bills introduced by Representative Metcalf out of Conroe that relate directly to the River Authority. One is House Bill 3116. It allows for the County Commissioners Court to provide recommendations to the governor for appointment of directors to the River Authority. Don't really see that as problematic. They're non-binding recommendations to the governor. House Bill 4575 is an alternative to that recommendation process. It would require that the River Authority directors be elected as opposed to appointed by the governor. Some folks feel strongly about the manner of selection for the River Authority directors, so that's one to be aware of if you do have a strong feeling about that. Also, House Bill 4576 that one, if it got traction, which right now it doesn't seem to have a lot of traction, but if it did proceed to passage, would require the River Authority to hold an election and for voters to approve the River Authority's issuance of revenue bonds, which is very unusual. Revenue bonds are not generally subject to voter approval because they're revenue derived from contracts or rates that are imposed on customers, as opposed to property taxes. Those have always been subject to voter approval to issue tax-backed bonds. If that bill were to pass, the media reports seem to indicate that the motivation behind that bill being introduced was opposition from the Lake Conroe area to the River Authority's GRP program and the construction of the surface water plant with revenue bonds. But the text of the bill doesn't limit its applicability to the GRP division of the River Authority. It applies to the River Authority generally, which includes the Woodlands division. So as you know, the River Authority issues revenue bonds, contract revenue bonds, in order to fund the major rehab and rehabilitation of the Woodlands division infrastructure. And also what we've talked about with the feasibility study for the potential consolidation of the wastewater treatment facilities in the Woodlands. If that feasibility study showed that it was worthwhile to proceed with that consolidation and the member districts approved doing so, then that project would be funded with revenue bonds, which would be cast into uncertainty if there had to be a vote for those bonds to be issued. So right now, that bill has been assigned to a committee. It has not had a hearing, last I checked yesterday, and it does not have a companion bill in the Senate, which means that House bill would have to make it all the way through the hearing process, the floor vote, and then go over to the Senate and then start that process all over again on the Senate side and get all that completed before the session ended at the end of May. A lot of times, bills that are a high priority or have a lot of momentum, you'll have identical bills that are introduced in both the House and the Senate to give the best chance of success to one version of the bill being passed or another, whichever one happens to move most quickly. So those two structural things seem to indicate that it's not in a great position to pass at this point, but with 6 months in the session, it's a bit premature to give any solid outlook on the probability of passage or non-passage at this point. What I've been telling boards is if you're have a very strong feeling about that bill and want to go and testify against it, if it happens to get a hearing, we can work with the River Authority to have them notify Jim if that bill has been set for a hearing, and Jim can notify interested directors. You just need to let Jim know if you'd like to be notified, and you could go to Alston and offer testimony at that hearing regarding the bill as a MUD director. That would be, your district would be impacted by that decision. So that's an option if your schedule would allow for you to go to Alston. A lot of times these committee hearings are scheduled on pretty short notice, so you need to have the flexibility to do that. But that option is available if any of you would like to do so. So that's kind of the general overview of the session. Of course, once the session is over, we will have the full written legislative summary for each director that will go through each of the bills that have a material impact on mud business, and we'll work on implementing those bills that are passed or implementing the changes that are necessary to comply with those bills once the session is over. That summary usually comes out at the end of June or beginning of July. So that's about it on the legislative front. Happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
Brian, has the deadline passed for new bills to be submitted?
Yes.
That was easy.
Any other questions for Brian?
Brian, I just want you to know that I tried on Monday to get onto the webinar for the AWBD cybersecurity training, and it doesn't work at the AWBD office. And they know there's a glitch in it, so they're supposed to give us a call when they finally get it up and working. But if you missed the live training, their webinar session is not working as of yesterday.
Okay, this is Brian. That's good to know, because there's a lot of directors who are waiting to do that, because every single director's got to comply with this cybersecurity website, which is, I think, ridiculous. We talked about that before, but that be what it may, because we've got a lot of directors that have zero access to any sort of district infrastructure that would be subject to cybersecurity hacking. I mean, y'all at least have some access to a Google Drive and to download stuff that I guess could be subject to cybersecurity vulnerability, but there are a lot of districts that have zero access to something that would be zero access to mud items that would be at risk of cyber hacking. So we've got a lot of directors that are trying to get that done. So I appreciate you letting me know.
Yeah, this is Scott, and maybe it's for a future discussion, but I seem to recall our discussion about the mud directors having to do that being based on an interpretation, a conservative interpretation of the statute or their policy. So if we're in a position to push,
correct.
If we can push back on that, I would surely support that. I think, that Google Drive is, you're right, it's the only thing I have access to do. And I cannot imagine that anything less than 100% of that is foiable. So I don't get it. Maybe that's a future discussion.
Yeah, this is Brian. That was a directive provided by the Texas Department of Information Resources that until this bill passed, I don't think most people knew even existed. And so their guidance, and they're in charge of basically maintaining that compliance program. They're the ones who gave the guidance that all elected officials should complete the training, regardless of whether they have access to any facilities or infrastructure that would be subject to cybersecurity hacking, which makes no sense.
All right, Brian. Appreciate it.
Anyway, that's all I have on the attorney's report. Last item, as usual, there's been no indication from the governor's office about the disaster proclamation, so related to COVID. So we remain status quo on that.
Yes, sir. All right. Number 15, consider an act on a resolution to add the subsidence metric to the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District's DFCs.
Okay, I started this off after watching the Lone Star meetings, the Lone Star Groundwater Conservation District meetings over the last couple of weeks, and the GMA 14 meeting. And it sure felt like those guys needed to receive word in writing, about our concerns and what we were looking for. And so I started off with a draft, with the idea being, we could initiate a resolution for Scott to carry up to the Board of Trustees and get their support. It turned out there were a lot of other mud directors who were real interested in it, and they provided lots of markup. And they initiated putting it on their agenda also. So Jim has recommended that, you know, rather than each mud having a resolution to carry forward, that we have a standard one that is carried across all the muds, potentially could be carried to the township board of directors, other municipal boards, and try have a standard message. The only concern I have is that there's been a lot of words in the newspaper here lately. There's been an article on Monday, I think it was, in Houston Chronicle. And over the weekend, depending on when you got the Conroe Community Impact magazine, it didn't appear in the Woodlands version, but they had an excellent article up there. And I understand there's a recent article in a Conroe news organization about a water plant being built in Conroe to process bottled water, something like 10 million gallons a year. So there's a lot of activity and a lot of words in the newspaper. So the question is, you know, how should we proceed? Should we have our own resolution, provide input to Jim on a standard resolution? And, you know, either way, we need to get to a look at what's there and decide, well, what should be in a resolution, and then decide how to, I think the way to do it is decide what should be in the resolution, review what's there, and then decide, should it be something standardized for all the muds, or initiate something, just get the ball rolling. So I'll throw that back for conversation.
And there were, I think, mud 1, mud 60, and mud 4, four of our muds. I was contacted by the presidents or members to put an item on their agenda. And this was created, I think, last Thursday and Friday, if I remember.
It was quick. There was a tremendous amount of enthusiasm from other mud directors where they wanted to get involved in, and it definitely was improved.
But anyway, a great document and a great effort and a great plan and a great strategy. It's just at the meeting on Tuesday morning, we started talking about maybe trying to get a larger group, maybe the township, maybe the One Water Task Force, maybe the Woodlands Water Agency trustees. And over the weekend, Ron Kelling and I had some discussions about maybe putting in tweaking this somewhat to talk about specific numbers rather than the word sustainables is used a lot. Anyway, and so we just said, well, maybe we can put a pause and try to get a bigger group together than just those 4 muds, 5 muds, and come up maybe by next month and have a consistent, uniform message that a whole bunch of folks are willing to carry forward to Lone Star and to the next DFC meeting when they hear comments from the Lone Star Groundwater District public hearing. So that's kind of where we are. And by the way, George, I think that plan is for 10 million gallons a month at the water plant instead of 10 million a year.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I had to think about that. Yeah.
A lot of water.
Yes.
So we're using 59 in March. We use 59 million gallons for mud 46, to put that in perspective.
Yeah, this is Scott. It's a leasing water rights on existing property to create that. I think that's the first instance in the county. So that's interesting.
And they haven't revealed what aquifer, who it is, or what aquifer they're planning to pump from. And in that area, we know that the Catahoula has some water quality problems. So, and we also know that the Jasper has been heavily utilized by a couple of Conroe water well plants, and that there's been documented subsidence in that region at the TxDOT plant or TxDOT office at 3083. So it presents some interesting scenarios.
All right, guys, that sounds good. Jim, do you see contacting other MUDs, Southern Mud and the MUDs along Rayford, and do you see inclusion with those other MUDs as well as what you mentioned, the
I
water?
think we owe the effort. We owe it to put out the effort to see how many people we can bring into this to get a consistent message. Yeah.
And can we ask for something to be put on the agenda at One Water concerning
The
this
agenda for
topic?
One Water is already out.
Okay.
But I think we have directors that certainly feel it's appropriate for this to be discussed at One Water. I will say I've seen an email from the chairman of One Water, not just I think of today, this afternoon, kind of taking a position that he doesn't think, he's not willing to have One Water be a part of this unified message, which was kind of surprising and disappointing. But
Well, historically, you know what I say about that. It's time for the MUDs and the Woodlands Water Agency to shift a gear and let's lead. I can't be any more blunt than that.
I think we've demonstrated with this, we're leading.
Yeah, I agree. I'm
We're
just,
leading.
you know,
It's just
yeah,
we would
I
like
agree.
others to
And
join.
I'm giving everybody an attaboy, but you know.
So as you talk about that, we have one resident who's on the township board of directors. And I'm wondering, is it appropriate for a couple of us to go visit him? And, you know, Jim, y'all have already gotten Gordy Bunch to talk at the Lone Star meeting, but would it be beneficial for him to hear from some of us, you know, what we're talking about doing?
I think this topic will be discussed at the meeting Tuesday of next week. Are you talking about doing something prior to the Tuesday meeting, One Water Task Force?
I'm thinking I heard you say that One Water didn't want to be part of it.
Yeah, let me, you know what, can you just hold back on that? Because I was privy to a copy of an email that, you know.
Well, it's already on the recorder.
Yeah, but I think it deserves another try and maybe some more discussion before we take that and go public with it, or go confront anybody about it.
Well, I wasn't suggesting confronting. I was suggesting go visit Gordy as a resident from our district and, you know, put a one-on-one kind of sales approach on it.
I think that is okay.
Maybe two or three on one, you know, I guess it can't be three directors, but.
How
It'll be,
about inviting Mr. Bunch, Chairman Bunch, to a MUD 46 meeting?
Exactly.
I think that'd be great. That would help him.
Can we put that on the agenda for next month? Or if we have to have a special meeting to treat that more special, we can do that. But we're running out of time. We got less than 30 minutes. And George, I think what you did was fantastic, and a good attaboy in what you did in getting this ball rolling. And so, Jim?
Are there any additions, deletions that need to be communicated to Jim?
Right. I was going to tell Jim to get with whoever he needs to get with and have some dialogue back with George or whoever you want.
I'll be working with the Sandy Center River Authority and our staff, and then I'll be communicating with George what tweaks we think might need to be considered. And our goal is to have something presented to you and others certainly in the next month.
Good deal.
Okay.
All right, 16, consider an act on approval of a revised content policy. Would that be Brian?
This is Brian. That's correct. So this item was briefly discussed last month. We had a red line of the proposed changes. There have been no modifications to the version that was presented last month, and so it is on all agendas to all MUD board agendas this month to consider approval of the policy. We do have to have all the MUDs approve it since it is a consolidated policy for the Woodlands districts.
And all of the previous MUDs have approved it, 8 of them, I believe.
This is Brian. That's correct. We had one deferral or had one that's going to be considering it again next month. They did not have their full board present.
Okay. I'll make Mark Vondereau, I'll make a motion that we adopt the revised policy content.
This is Margie. I'll make a second.
Okay, thank you, Margie. Any more discussion? I will call roll. Mark Vondereau, aye. Margie Podjalinsky,
Aye.
Deidre Eklund,
Aye.
Scott Custer,
Aye.
and George Newman.
Aye.
All right, thank you. 17, interlocal agreement regarding Spring Creek watershed. Jim Stetson?
This is formalizing the partnership we've been working on for a couple of months with the San Jacinto River Authority, the Harris County Flood Control District, City of Humble, MUD 386, and our MUDs 1, 7, 60, and 46, to continue the analysis of putting in dam/detention upstream on Spring Creek upstream of the Woodlands that would improve drainage through the Woodlands, primarily in Grogan's Point, Grogan's Mill, MUD 60, and other MUD 7. This is a $1 million effort. The calculation sheet is kind of convoluted, but the bottom line is MUD 46's maximum contribution could be $76,500. The likely contribution is about $58,900. And the variable in there is what the Texas Water Development Board allows for the San Jacinto River Authority to claim as in-kind services that would be deducted from our local match. So just, it's based on number of active connections for the year, estimated active connections for the year 2021. And that ratio was carried through our MUDs and MUD 386. The City of Humble offered just to put a flat $50,000 contribution in to be a part of this. The benefits to the City of Humble aren't near as much as they're going to be to MUD 46 and our MUDs, but it was nice to have them join. So we're recommending that you authorize me to execute this agreement and get this worthwhile project going.
Okay, I need a motion, folks.
I'll make the motion, Mark. This is Margie.
Okay, thank you, Margie.
I'll second. This is George.
All right, George, thank you. I will call the vote now. Mark Vondereau, aye. Deidre Eklund,
Aye.
Margie Podjalinsky,
Aye.
George Newman,
Aye.
Scott Custer.
Aye.
All right, thank y'all. 18, status on the branch crossing ditch repair.
This is Mike. We got the contracts from the contractor last Friday for our signature. Jim signed those today. We have a pre-construction meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. I anticipate the contractor to mobilize week of the 26th, sometime next week. Small, short time period project. So hopefully this time next month, we're either punching out or down to the last punch list items. Of course, all weather permitting, but We're
Okay.
ready to kick it off, and we're going to start tomorrow with the pre-construction conference.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Any questions for Mike? Okay. Jim, general managers.
You know, in the interest of time, I'm going to state that I've been reviewing, I think, 7 items from the trustee report and highlighting those. They're very, I have very good descriptions in the trustee summary of all of these items, and just in the interest of time to try to make sure we get through this meeting before the next, I would if you have any questions, I'll be happy to address those, but everything I'm going to talk about is written in detail in the trustee summary.
Yes, sir.
I just had one question for you, Jim, on this page 49, where it says that you guys are trying to relocate those poles. Does it mean that you're trying to put the poles over at Forest Gate Park and Sawmill Park? So they're really not a deterrent to anybody's neighborhood?
That is an option we're looking at. The township has said they have an interest in those being there and could utilize them. So we'll see. A propagation study is being done, and then just looking at cost and looking at logistics if it can happen.
Okay. That was a
Mark
good.
Vonderow, we only have two poles that are problem poles so far, just 2.
So far, only two poles and I think 4 residents.
Okay. All right. Simple math.
Always something.
Okay. Number 20, consider an act on an AWBD district voting member representative.
This is as simple as the memo you see in your packet. It hit us blindsided, and just in the interest of time, they're asking that you select one person to represent you in voting for the amendment election to the bylaws and the trustee election in June. You don't have to be there. You can vote by computer. It is what it is, as goofy as it is.
Okay. Mark Vonderow here. I do not mind being that representative, but if somebody else would want to be that representative, speak up. Speak
And just
down.
the protocol with other MUDs is to have the presiding officer or the president take that role. So that's inconsistent.
All
Okay.
right.
Sounds good. So do we need a vote?
We need a motion to make me the voting member at AWBD.
Okay, I'll make that motion, Mark. This is Margie.
Thank you, Margie.
Scott, I'll second it.
Thank you, Scott. I'll call the vote. Mark Vonderow, aye. Deidre Eklund,
Aye.
Scott Custer,
Aye.
George Newman,
Aye.
and Margie Podjalinski.
Aye.
All right. Number 21, thank you. Prioritize goals for the March special meeting. Do you want to hit that real quick or just go on to the Woodlands Water Trustees report? George, do you have anything you want to?
You know, I didn't see that item on the agenda, and I didn't prepare any comments. I'm sorry. Can we carry it over till next time?
Sure.
Sure.
Sure, not a problem. Okay, Scott Custer, Woodlands Water Trustees report.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add this month aside from what's documented. There was one vote where I was the one against, but I explained that to y'all last month. That was on the budget process for some reserve money coming back from SGRA. Aside from that, I don't have any additions to what's documented.
Okay.
If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Could you just explain that one again? I know you explained it last month, but I don't have it written down.
Yeah, I'll do my best. There was a and Jim, keep me honest, the source of the money, but SGRA had some excess funds that would be either reimbursed to where would it go? It would either be reimbursed to the individual MUDs, or it would be carried forward and used against the allocation of certain capital expenses. And I know I'm butchering that, but the decision was between refunding that money or using it against a list of projects. And the list of projects were defined
Okay.
And a vote to do that meant that you were also approving the list of projects. And the list of projects had certain things in it. We needed a new forklift at one of the plants. We needed a second truck somewhere. They were all reasonable projects. The problem that I had was that the process was independent of any prioritization with a vote. The process occurred, the list of items were applied to the excess budget, and that created a budgetary process that's outside of our 10-year project plan and our normal prioritization plan. So my no vote was because of that, not that the projects themselves weren't useful. And so I've asked in separate conversations the SGRA to improve that process so that if we have that in the future, we have a voted upon prioritized list of projects that those excess funds would be applied against in the future. And I've got support, generally speaking, from the SGRA folks I've talked to about that.
Yes, I think that was a good suggestion, and we're happy to do that going forward.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that was the reason for my no vote. And because you're my constituents, technically you voted me in. I want you to know when I'm running against the board. So thank you.
I don't think that that's unreasonable to ask to have a separate vote from the budgetary measures on projects.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, 23, future matters to be put on future agendas. Prioritize our 2021 goals for next year.
Right.
Put that on there. I'd like to hear something about the situation of the dam on Bear Branch, maybe from Chris Meeks or Jim, whoever addressed that.
Yeah, you know what? And that was part of my discussion. Since we have a few minutes there, the inspection, an annual inspection is done at the Bear Branch Reservoir under the guidance of the Lake Conroe Division. They're the dam experts in the SGRA conglomerate. And the last inspection revealed some voids underneath the concrete slope paving. And we need to identify the extent of those voids and what measures need to be taken to get those corrected. And it's still being evaluated, determine the extent and how big a project this might be. And our goal is to have that information back to you and all the MUDs that participate in that by July, so you can factor that into your budget discussions in August and September.
Good deal. All right.
So on the future meetings, do you need to have an agenda item to invite Gordy Bunch? Or would he be invited and informed, we're going to do this discussion on a resolution? How would y'all treat that?
Yeah. How do you want to treat that and be politically correct in this day and time?
Mhm.
This is Brian. I mean, I think if y'all want to have an item just about that issue on the agenda, but I don't think we need anything that's particular to a township board member being referenced on that agenda item. It's just an item for placement for discussion by the board. If somebody shows up, okay. If they don't, you can still talk about it.
So who should invite him?
This is Mark Monderow. I'm sorry to interrupt, George, but Jim, we have a One Water meeting next Tuesday. So can we think about this and see what is said at the One Water meeting next Tuesday, and then
I think that's a good idea. Don't make that decision today.
Good
Let's
idea.
see what happens, evolves over the next week or so and get some more information.
Good idea.
I mean, it'd be nice to have anybody come. It's a public meeting. They can come or not come, but it'd be nice.
It'd be, he's had a lot of opinions and we've worked on some of those things. It'd be good for him to come visit.
maybe so. So we'll get back the end of next week, maybe
Mhm.
with Jim. So anything else?
Mm-mm.
Aging infrastructure, long-term capital funding. That's what I'm going to be saying till May of 2022. We got old pipes in the ground, and that's what I'm going to be saying for the rest of my term.
Well,
And
Jim, I wanted to ask Jim if there's so much in this packet on TACUS. Has there been any updates on TACUS? And if not, can we put that on the agenda for next month?
I'll be giving you, the update is in your packet.
Yeah, I've read every article in there. There's a lot of articles.
And in the trustee summary is the most recent information. Well,
Okay.
except I had a 2-hour meeting with their chief financial officer this morning.
Oh, my word.
And we're still on a path of productive discussions and trying to work some things out. So I think we stay the course as long as I feel like these are productive and working.
Yeah, because, and this is Scott, to me, it's noise until you get the agreement that TACUS is going to be your central point of collection for damages, right? As opposed to the individual contractors.
And
Everything else is like PR statements.
Is it just TACUS that's doing the damage, or are there other
TACUS.
Actually, not
AT&T's doing it.
You know, they've had, well, TACUS is not the contractor. They've got 40
40
subcontractors.
subcontractors. Yeah.
And they've created an intentional buffer firewall between them and their contractors regarding payment. And they have the state government code on their side to some degree. So it's a delicate minefield that we're negotiating here, but we feel like we're making progress.
Do they want to be a good partner or not? Yep.
all right then, Mr. Shackelford, welcome to your first Mud 46 solo meeting. Funnest
Thank you,
mud
sir.
district in all the Woodlands, Texas. Maybe even the state, but haven't figured that out yet. But guys, I enjoyed it, and I think we're doing some good stuff. And I guess I can say adjourn the meeting with
Second.
8 minutes to spare before Mud 36 starts.
Good.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank y'all.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Bye.
See ya.